Welcome to Software Leaders Uncensored with Steve Taplin. Welcome to Software Leaders Uncensored, where tech leaders drop the filters and just tell it like it is. I'm your host, Steve Taplin, serial tech entrepreneur. I have 30 companies under my belt. 20 of those didn't work out, but 10 scaled to success. And that crazy roller coaster of an entrepreneurial ride is what I talk about in my book, Fail Hard, Win Big. And this is my story on how I educate entrepreneurs, tech leaders, that you have two choices when you fail, whether it's a project, whether it's a company. You can sit there and sulk and be upset, which we're human. We can all do that. But in my mind, you have a 24-hour clock. Get over it. Look at what you learned, what went wrong, and how you minimize happening that again. And you got to use that as a superpower. And custom software has always been the differentiator for my companies on building internal operating systems, unique client experiences, and raising enterprise value. Now I'm the CEO of Sononify Technology. We are a US-based company that provides nearshore engineering teams to help existing teams scale. And today I am joined by Aron Semle. And Aron is a tech leader. He's been a founder. He's a CTO, and he's a fun guy. We're going to have some fun here. Aron, welcome.
Thank you. Great to be here, Steve.
Aron, if you would take our listeners through the journey of your career and what has led you to be CTO of HighByte.
Yeah. So it started with computers. So I got into video games early on. I remember my first Nintendo that I got was amazing. And then we got into PC gaming in the early 2000s. And I have two brothers and we would just build PCs to play games. And I kind of got in my head that, hey, this is really cool. We would spend all of our money on graphics cards. And I was like, I want to design graphics cards because this is just cool stuff. So I went to college for computer engineering and I got my first hardware internship shortly after that. And I hated it. I absolutely hated it. It was, I was doing electrostatic discharge for semiconductors, trying to figure out if chips would fry coming down the line if someone touched them. And it was just very cookie cutter.
NVIDIA to the punch, man.
That's it. I would be
valuable company.
This is part of the story, right? But I hated it. It felt very cookie cutter. I got into software. I felt like it was much more creative, and that's kind of where I made my split. Looking back, was that the right move? I think so. But yeah, if I had stuck with AMD or NVIDIA, that would be different. So I did that. I graduated. I didn't have a job lined up at the time because I was so busy trying to get through school. And the dean hated that, right? Because that's one of the metrics that they get judged on. So I interviewed right after I graduated with a company called Kepware in town. They were involved in Portland, Maine, where I am, in industrial manufacturing. And I was an hour late to the interview because I'd messed up the timing. But somehow Tony Payne, who was the CEO of Kepware and is now the CEO of the company I work for, HighByte, hired me anyway. So it's like, all right, I did all right, although being an hour late.
A college kid, a recent college grad shows up an hour late and still got hired.
Still got it. I don't know what to tell you.
You did something on that interview to blow them away.
Yep. So that launched me into software, and specifically software in manufacturing. So Kepware focused on connectivity to machines and assets in manufacturing to pull data off lines, which is it's a really cool industry to be in terms of a tech leader, right? Because we were early in my career, I got to go to Fremont, California and go to the Tesla plant and walk the powertrain division. And I got to go to Lego out in Denmark. So I've been to some really cool places where just stuff's being made and been a part of that. So I joined Kepware probably around 30 employees. We grew it to 120 and then sold it to a company called PTC out of Needham, Massachusetts back in 2016. And that's when I jumped from the 100-person company to the 6,000-person company. And I was more in product management at the time. I lasted a couple of years there, but kind of got the itch to go do my own thing, jumped off and totally switched career paths and went into fall prevention in nursing homes with a device and some software to try to help prevent that. That was wild. That was one of my failures, Steve. I think we all have them, but it was a success in a lot of other ways. And then COVID hit. You couldn't get into nursing homes. You couldn't sell. So decided to branch out, reach back out to the former CEO of Kepware, Tony, and then landed at HighByte back in industrial manufacturing, helping large manufacturing companies kind of clean up their data and have a data strategy in the plant. So I think that's most of it. The only thing I'd add is in there, I kind of went the product management route. So I went up, kind of grew as an engineer, and then I went and became a product manager, product owner. So kind of got the business side of it. Now I'm back on the engineering side. And I think we could talk more about that, but I think most CTOs are probably fairly business minded as well. And I think that's an important aspect of it.
I like that you diversified your experience there with product management. And before we jump into HighByte, because I want to talk about it more, Certainly CTO is one of the most respected positions. If you're an engineer, most have the goal to rise. The ones that are business orientated want to rise through the ranks, become CTO. It's a extraordinarily difficult position where you not only have the challenge of leading engineering teams and providing the right direction, but keeping non-tech people on your side, educating them on what you do, justifying your existence, whether it's CFOs or board members or investors. And, with that said, the CTO role has been very volatile, and there's often, CTOs that are looking for new gigs. And you landed your current position and correct me if I heard you right, but your network. You had a previous CEO you worked for, and it was time to make a move. So you utilized your network, and that's how you got this position?
Yeah. Yep. Absolutely. Yeah. I work with a bunch of former colleagues from Kepware. We're in the same industry, right? Which is, I learned pretty quick that when you jump industry after working 10 years into manufacturing, then you jump into healthcare, it's like, whoa, like it is ground up networking, building, trying to understand. So being back to manufacturing inside my existing network, there's just a lot of synergy and things are a lot easier because of that. You appreciate the knowledge that you gain over the years
Last
experience.
time I checked, people told me applying for a CTO job on LinkedIn or Indeed doesn't work. And because they just get flooded and you have to know someone. So appreciate you
Yeah.
sharing that. All
Yep.
right. Tell us about HighByte.
Yeah. So HighByte, we have, I would say we coined the term industrial data ops. So data ops is an IT discipline that is basically moving data between systems. When you think that comes out of fintech, any big, large tech company. We call industrial data ops because it's the application of those same kind of technologies. And specifically, you can think in the IT, things like MuleSoft, if you're familiar with that, or
Sure.
Boomi, like these large applications to manage and move data. We apply that same technique into manufacturing, but what's different in manufacturing is there's no data strategy when you enter the factory floor, right? It's emerging, right? But the idea is like in a factory, rubber hits the road in terms of tech. Like we need to produce output and the technology piece and the data piece is secondary, right? So when we install a piece of equipment, the first thing is to get it up like an injection molding machine in a line. We need to get it up and running. We need to start running bottles and producing product. Okay, after we get that, then let's start to look at the data and see how we can optimize this and how we can run it more efficiently, how we could go from like scheduled maintenance to more predictive maintenance and this kind of thing. But it's a progression of industry. So tech in manufacturing is always secondary to operations, right? So what HighByte helps companies do is we come in and say, okay, let's take a more disciplined look at your data strategy. Let's take this data that's bespoke in different places. We're talking like CSV files out on random file systems that have like test equipment data information. How we bring all that together into a common schema and allow you to exchange that data in and out of the factory as if the factory was any other IT service with APIs and fully functional. So we kind of help customers that are along any part of that journey mature their digital strategy. We call it digital transformation in manufacturing. And like, for example, Tesla, good or bad, given the current headlines, like they're a great example of a company that, when I went to California, their data strategy was like first and foremost, like we're almost a data company that happens to manufacture cars. And you can see that, despite
Eh,
most
And
recently,
they took the opposite approach, which makes a lot of sense despite current challenges.
exactly. Yeah. And you see a lot of other industry, the industry's moving that way. So they were just a leader in that even over a decade ago. And manufacturing slow to change. So that's the one thing about being a CTO in manufacturing. You can kind of look at the latest in IT, and we're probably about 5 years behind it. So you can kind of cheat on the test a little bit in terms of the technology that's coming.
Gotcha. Interesting. Well, tell us about some current projects you're working on.
Yeah, and I imagine some other tech leaders can imagine it's AI, right? And a big, we'll probably get into it later, Steve. But one of the big parts of the role is like how you manage this AI hype and how you figure out what's real. MIT just released a press release the other day that 95% of AI pilots are failing or not producing value, and it's like, well, how do you reckon that with the hype around the technologies? Because we're applying a data strategy to the plant. So think of that as an API, a way to exchange data in and out of the factory for equipment and machines. AI obviously needs rich contextualized data to be effective, right? It can't deal with raw data streams like a random temperature sensor. It needs the context of that temperature sensors on this line, and it's baking this product at this time, and it's been run by this operator. So a lot of what we're doing lately is around a technology called MCP. It's Model Context Protocol to expose industrial data to agentic AI tools so that you can start to use LLMs and agents on industrial data. And it's still really early. Your customers are in the exploratory phase of that, trying to figure out where the value is. But it's exciting because it's, technology is what, less than 3 years old now. That's when ChatGPT first hit the wire back November 2022. And
Yep.
we're already seeing people try to deploy it on the factory floor and trying to explore what's possible with it. So it's exciting, but it's trying to balance that, like what's possible, what's practical versus what's being talked about in the headlines.
So you made the comment that manufacturing is typically like 5 years behind in the tech cycle. So how do you go into companies like that and help them have more efficient data, integrate AI, and take that leap when they're a laggard and I'm guessing often resistant to it?
Yeah, so the quick answer is you wrap and extend, you don't rip and replace. Manufacturing
Okay.
is the quick answer. And the reason for that is rip and replace is like very expensive industrial equipment or infrastructure that's capital expense. So a lot of what we do is take an existing asset that might be 10 years, 15 years old, and then connect to it over whatever native protocols it has, and then modernize it so you can access that data over MQTT as an example, REST, other interfaces that are more modern and easy to interface with. So that's one of the big rules in manufacturing is you can't rip and replace functional assets. It just the balance sheet doesn't work out if you do that. So it's trying to show companies how you do that, and you don't have to do it all as one mega project. You can kind of layer that in and get the value as you go. But it's funny because it's an engineering software discipline. The whole like iterate and build on top. So when you go into a place that doesn't necessarily think like that, although they have lean manufacturing, and you're trying to teach them that hey, we can build towards an architecture piece by piece and build over time. We don't have to make it a big capital expense. That could be a challenge in and of itself.
Gotcha. Well,
Yeah.
tell us about your engineering team that's pulling off what you do. How many engineers do you have? Where are they located? What kind of it looks like you're physically in an office right now. Uh tell us tell
Yeah. Yeah, so we're hybrid like everybody else or most folks, company our size. Um, but I'm an office person. I cannot work from home. I don't know if anyone else relates, but I'm like in the fridge every 5 minutes. I'm like up playing, like I just can't focus. Like when I'm in an office, I'm old school in that sense, and I can focus.
You're a
But
young
yeah,
guy to be old school. Come on, man.
I know, I know. Yeah, I know we might get into some of like the hiring people now versus 10 years ago, but sometimes I feel like I'm an old curmudgeon. I'm like, the world we're in now, it's like, wow,
Maybe it's the manufacturing industry that's doing that to you.
maybe it might be. But yeah, no, we have it's still a fairly small team. I think we're up to 12 now engineers, and that's engineered. We have software developers and QA. We're not roughly, I think we're like 2 to 3 devs to or 3 to 2 devs to QA split. It was funny back in the Kepware days, we were 50-50, which is really rare. So we had a QA engineer for every software developer because we were doing some really intensive software development in terms of communication drivers that needed to work 100% of the time. So testing was really important. And that's true mostly in manufacturing. We're a little less at 3-2. And then we actually just hired a software engineering manager less than a year ago. Sam brought her in and she's managing the team direct. So I went from like 10 to 12 direct contacts to or reports to one most recently, which has been nice. It's allowed me to focus a little bit more on customer industry vision. And we're probably right at the point where that team, it's acting as one team now, is just about to split off into 2 separate dev teams and kind of going through the process of how we're going to do that and how we work in that environment. And then the other big piece is how they interface with product management, which is another big part of our company. So just kind of maturing in all those aspects at once.
So in the manufacturing world where you're not ripping and replacing, you're using your words, wrapping and extending, when you're doing QA, can you automate QA or does it need to be highly manual based on the industry?
Yeah, that's a great question. So we do have automated QA. We started that probably 3 years ago. In terms of total test coverage, I would imagine it's below. I don't think we probably don't even have that metric, but it's probably below 50%. And what we really do is we push manual QA first. So when we develop a feature and first land it, we want someone to actually walk through the product and use it, right? Both from like, hey, does it functionally work? But also as a user, does it just look and feel right? Is this fun? Is it pleasant, or is it a mess? And then once we finish that, then we branch off and do automated QA on whatever part of it we feel like is most practical.
Gotcha.
But we do have a mix of
And
both.
is your engineering team US only, spread out? Where are they located?
Yeah, we're US only right now. We're mostly I think we're all in Eastern time zone. We actually have a guy moving out to the West Coast pretty soon out to Oregon, I think. So he'll be West Coast, but it's all Eastern time zone. A majority are in the Northeast, and then a few dispersed. But and I would say we probably have 2 or 3 engineers that come into the office routinely. Everyone else is fully remote or hybrid.
Gotcha. So,
Yeah.
in this time of AI assistance to match resumes to job postings and to act as a guide in engineer testing, that's often part of interviewing processes. How do you guys go about hiring engineers, and what do you look for?
Yeah, no, it's a great question. Luckily, I've got a direct report engineering manager who's doing that now, and she's made some great hires. So it's been good, but it is a challenge. I think if you look over the past year, maybe 2 years, I mean, it's like an order of magnitude more submissions to resumes for QA and engineering roles. So yeah, one of the challenges is just getting through those resumes. I mean, what we look for specifically, you look for anyone that has industry experience is great. That's pretty rare, right? But we look for good development experience. Me personally, when I was interviewing, I'm looking for a passion, right? I'm not looking for someone that's just, you'll get paid great. If you're a great engineer, you'll do fine, right? But I want to know that you have a passion in it, you have a drive to it, which you can kind of see when you're interacting with somebody and you're asking about technology, how deep they can go, how passionate they get. And also the other thing is if you just have like, I'll just give you one. If you have a GitHub account and you put it on your resume and I go look at it and it's pretty clear to me that this is just a created GitHub account for resumes, like I'm out, right? But if I go in there and I can see like you got pet projects that like you're just doing for fun, like you don't care if anyone looks at it or not, now I'm more interested, right? Because it just shows you have like you'd be doing this regardless if you had the job or not. You just have a kind of a passion for the craft.
Gotcha. No, and that's a great idea because it could take all of 10 seconds in GitHub to see if they just put that together for the interview or if they're truly
Yeah.
using it. I like that. I like that. What, Aaron, what are some brutal lessons that you know now that you wish you would have knew earlier in your career?
Yeah, I think it's called Chesterton's fence principle. It's basically don't go changing anything until you know why it's there in the first place. It's a political principle, but it's essentially like the philosophy is there's a fence in the road and you come up to the fence and you got to get through the road. So you could just tear the fence down and go. And then, but what might happen is you might figure out why the fence was there in the first place, right? And I think practically it applies to software engineering in particular, because I think we can all relate to this. Like code that you've written or code that anyone has written, no one likes it. Like as soon as code is more than 3 months old, like no one's got anything good to say about it. And we all want to refactor it and change it. And it's no good. It's garbage code, right? And it's tempting, especially as a young engineer, to go in there and look at a design and just go, oh, this is totally wrong. Or even as a seasoned engineer and just be like, I'm going to rewrite this and redesign this without like fundamentally understanding why it's there. And 9 times out of 10, what you do is you either just create new problems you were never aware of, and you find that out months later after making the change. I think it's really important as you mature in your engineering discipline to look at a problem and fully understand how it was solved in the first place before you go and make changes to it. And then that works with refactor. Anytime I hear, hey, we're going to refactor the code base and we're just going to rewrite everything, like to me, that is the last resort. Like we should never do that unless we absolutely have to, right? But it's just another example of we don't fully understand what it was doing, but we don't like it, and we're just going to rip and replace, I guess, to go back to that
Now,
analogy.
do you still have hands-on keyboard at all? Are you doing any direct programming these days?
I am, and not as much, maybe like 10 or 20% of my time. And I try to stay out of you want the engineering team to own the code. Like it's our job to give them the vision of what we're doing and the why we're doing it, but the how is largely up to the team and give them that autonomy. But I do like to just kind of be on the side of that, working on like advanced features that we might not have put in the product for 6 months, stuff we can demo, just to stay enough in it to keep grounded in reality. And I think that helps me personally. It helps just ground me in like what's actually possible, to make sure that what we're asking of the team isn't like completely unreasonable. And honestly, it just helps with my sanity a little bit as well. Like there's only so many meetings and so many discussions, board meetings, everything else you can be in, where you just sometimes you just want to sit down for an hour and write some code and see an outcome.
So how, and as a CTO leading engineering teams, whatever we talk about on AI today will be different in 2 weeks when the podcast airs. There'll
Yeah.
be new versions.
Yeah.
And so that's the big challenge for CTOs, and depending on the size of the organization, sometimes they're very far from coding anymore, but My question is, do you do stuff at nights and weekends to make sure you're understanding AI tools and how to code in them and staying up on trends? What's your take?
Yeah. So I try. We're pretty good work-life balance. So I try not to do nights and weekends unless it's like some hot customer thing that absolutely needs to happen. But I did spin up Claude Code and like created a little app, like quote unquote vibe code recently, just to see what it would do, to get a sense of that. And aside from that, we also, experimentation in the team. So like we went out and got subscriptions to all the, like, because they're not super expensive, all the coding thing. And I gave it to a few senior devs and said, just play with it. Like, just kick the tires on it. And let's meet once a week and see what we find. But, my perspective is there's certain CT. I mean, you've seen it announced where people are like, you need to do X percentage of your coding with AI, and I'm not that type. Like, here it is. It's a tool. Try to use it. If it doesn't work, don't use it. If it does, let's try to find a way to standardize it so we're not all using different tools, but really allow the team to kind of to dictate that and just give them the environment where they can experiment with it.
And so as far as engineering instance assistance, what tools do you like? You mentioned Claude.
Yeah, we tried Cursor, Claude, GitHub Copilot's okay. It's probably a little behind on the Microsoft brand there, but Claude Code seems pretty good right now. But I think the challenge with it with us is, I mean, you go on a LinkedIn, you read the headlines, and it's like this stuff is just generating thousands of lines, and we're all going to be out of jobs, and software is dead, right? Like we talk about it as if it's reached AGI, although it hasn't.
Yep.
And then you go to use it, and you find that like in our code base, we're not like a lot of software in the sense that we're running inside the plant. Like we're an actual Java process running in the plant on constricted hardware. We're not a SaaS product. We're not in the cloud. The customer installs us. We're kind of old school in that sense, which means we have to deal with threading, like all the nitty gritty of software development. And you point these tools at that kind of level of granularity, and they're not great, right? Hallucinations, really bad code. If we just need to stand up like a form to enter data for the product, like in a React or whatever, more standard stuff, it's actually pretty good at that. So it's more nuanced, right? There's parts of Claude Code that would work really well and automate some of our product, maybe speed us up 20, 30%. And there's other parts that it's just, unless again, something changes in 2 weeks, like it's almost waste your time to try to use it because it's that bad. And it's really given the team the ability to play around and figure out where that value is.
There's definitely been an evolution, especially from an engineering perspective. And you look at Musk buying Twitter, firing 80% of the people, Zuckerberg saying AI is the greatest thing in the world, and within 5 years, Meta will have 60% less software engineers. And I feel like there's been this holding pattern of, is software engineering going away? What is it? And now fast forward to where we are, I think there's a realization of what it can and can't do. And the beauty for us in the software engineering space is it's certainly a tool to help productivity, but it is far from replacing software developers. That's my opinion.
Yeah, it was probably a month or so ago. It was on Hacker News, and you followed it through with some Microsoft folks working on netcode and GitHub, and they were trying to use Copilot and some agents to make like trivial bug changes. But the whole PR reviews of everything that was going on and the interaction with the Microsoft employees with the agent was all in the PR review. So you could go look at the repo and look at them trying to work with these agents. And you could, I mean, it's just verbiage, right? They're just writing PR comments, but you could kind of sense the frustration these senior devs were having trying to teach these agents to do work. And my takeaway was that's Microsoft. Like they're at the front line of the best models in the world to do this, and look at them struggle with some of these PRs. Will it get better over time? I'm sure. But to your point, do I think it's, at the point where it's going to start replacing people in 5 years? I don't personally think so.
Yep, me neither. Although with that said, we've definitely seen where we may have had to have engineering teams of 8 people that now we can do with 5 or 6 people. The efficiencies that they're having, but I don't see anything on a roadmap that's going to bury that down more in the near future. ChatGPT 5, they made the biggest deal about it. It's horrible.
It's not.
It is really, really bad. So, I think none of us know what the AI swing. It's been exciting to say the least. But, the good news as we focus on software engineering, that's what this show's about, is I think the world's realized they still need us.
That's it. Yeah. We're still here for a while longer anyway.
That's right. So what are some of the biggest or business or technical outcomes you're focused on for the remainder of the year?
Yeah, we're leaning into the agentic AI piece because we just see manufacturers moving really fast, trying to adopt that technology. So do things like, can I create an agent that can monitor a machine, try to detect when that machine isn't operating quite correctly, and then like notify a maintenance system to create a work order to go do some maintenance on the machine. Like really simple tasks, right? But what we're trying to help is like customers are trying to jump to that without a clear data strategy, which the challenge in manufacturing is this is wild, but even inside the same manufacturer, you might have two plants they own that are making the same exact product. And if you look at the tech stacks in those factories, they're completely different, right? So
Funny.
you're dealing with this very heterogeneous environment. So you'll see them try to pilot something here, and then the lift to take it from plant A to plant B is almost as much effort as it took to implement in plant A, just because the tech stack is so different. And we're trying to help them again modernize that data platform so that that lift isn't the same.
Well, it keeps specialists who know their industry in demand,
It does.
especially when the same company producing the same things at different plants has different tech stacks.
Yep.
Those are definitely fun challenges, to say the least. Well, Aron, this has been a lot of fun. Really appreciate you getting uncensored with us today. Congrats on being a young guy that's touched a bunch of different areas, who's, reached the premium role of CTO, understanding the manufacturing industry. I really like your take that you said earlier of the expertise of being in an industry. And I know a lot of times I see CTOs trying to jump cross industry, and it is a lot harder because depending on the industry specific knowledge is so critical that you could be, setting yourself back quite a bit.
I think you take it for granted until you make one of those jumps and you're like, oh, it's not quite the same.
So before we wrap, give one final no BS piece of advice for tech leaders out there who are trying to build, scale, or even just survive in these crazy times.
Oh man, one piece of advice. Let's see. I would just say, yeah, of course, this is the question that I'll stumble on. Be open to experimentation. I think that's my biggest thing. Is like you almost get anxious, right? Like you read the headlines on AI, like we were just talking about. They're going to take all the engineering jobs, and Zuckerberg's out there like 60% work, and like you really just have to keep your hands dirty enough to make your own opinion. So don't get stuck in the headlines. I think even with my team on AI and their concerns around it, I think the more we dig into it and understand it ourselves and form our own opinions, like the less anxious you get and the more grounded you are.
Awesome advice. Aron, thank you so much. That's it for this episode of Software Leaders Uncensored. I'm Steve Taplin. If you like the show, go ahead and hit subscribe. If you didn't like it, well, you can kiss my butt and just tell your competitors about it. They could probably use the help. Remember to fail hard, win big, and always build what matters. See you next time.
Cheers.
That's a wrap. Another great episode of Software Leaders Uncensored. Thank you guys so much for listening. I really appreciate it. It's a lot of fun doing this show. I love talking with great tech leaders. As a side note, if you're interested, check out my new book, Fail Hard, Win Big. This is the story of how I built 30 companies, failed on 20, and turned 10 into multi-million-dollar wins. The common thread with all of them was custom software. Also, if you need software development help out there, my company, Sonatify Technology, we deliver world-class software development engineers out of Latin America. We have a solid track record of helping companies launch better products and faster. Thanks again for listening. Appreciate it and appreciate you.